Welcome to Connecting Communities. I'm your host, Nancy Bacci. With me today is Denise Molina-Capers, Director of the Racial and Social Justice Department for the City of Somerville. Thanks so much for coming on today, Denise.
Thank you for having me.
It's going to be an exciting conversation.
Absolutely.
I know lots of community members have heard about the work of RSJ, as we like to call it, and we thought it would be great for you to come on, be able to connect with the community, for people to put a face to the name, and really learn much more about the work that is happening with RSJ.
Thank you. I'm excited to share because we have a lot going on.
Can we start a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I am Dominican. My parents are both Dominican immigrants. They immigrated to the United States. I grew up in between Brooklyn, New York, and the Dominican Republic.
Wow, that's quite interesting.
Very different, but I think it added to my love of culture and diversity and really an understanding of my identity. And so I come from a family of activists and advocates. So for as long as I've known, I've been working within social justice. And so I got my double bachelor's from Pace University. I got my law degree. I'm a licensed attorney, a licensed educator, and I'm also a licensed advanced diversity practitioner.
Wow, that's a lot, but it really all kind of comes together very nicely when you think of the skill set required to be successful in this work.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the one common denominator, which was the important piece for me, is that growing up, my dad always said, when you grow up and you choose what you want to do in life, make sure that A, you love what you're doing, and two, you're giving back to your community. And so if you think about different elements of all of those pieces that I just mentioned, of my licensures and my education, they all really have to do with being able to equip myself to serve my community.
Excellent. Well, your dad sounds like a very wise man, and that's definitely the type of passion that is so pleasing to see in city employees, particularly because the work we do matters so much to the community members and has really ripples effects across all areas. So it's really great to hear a little bit about that. Can you tell us what was interesting about wanting to come to work for the City of Somerville?
So Somerville was a city that I was familiar with because I am a foodie. And so I had been exposed to Somerville both because I had friends who lived here and enjoyed the culture so much, and they were like, we found this gem in the middle of Massachusetts. And so we would often go and try out different restaurants. Again, my field has always been in civil justice, social justice, anti-racism. And so I was approached by the recruiter and asked, I thought at first that they were asking me if I knew anyone who would be interested in the position because I was already employed by a different organization. And they were like, no, we want you to see if you're interested in the position. And so I asked them to send me the description. And really I felt like it pulled together all those elements: education, social justice, anti-racism, law. And I said, you know what, this seems like the perfect next chapter. And so I applied. It was a very rigorous, not easy 2.5-month process of interviews and creating different projects to prove that I not only can understand what's needed of this position and this role, but that I can actually put things in action and organize. So it was very fruitful because I definitely felt that it was not easy to get the position. And I've not regretted my decision to accept the offer. I think that Somerville is a wonderful gem still. I think that there are so many people who live here, who love living here, who love working here, who are passionate about social justice, who are passionate about really seeing the city progress around equity issues and inclusion. And that for me is motivating because I understand that my role in the city is not just people talking. It's actually people wanting the action. It's actually people wanting to be invested and wanting to see things progress in a more positive light in whatever initiative we're working on. So it's been an absolute challenge, but a good challenge that I welcome.
That's great to hear. And I mean, your passion for the work comes through just even in this super brief conversation. So we're definitely happy to have you on board. And as we know, Mayor Ballantyne is continuing the work that Mayor Curtatone had started with the creation of this office, and really the importance of having a place, point people in order for there to be greater communication with the residents. So if someone's tuning in and is not at all familiar with RSJ, lay the groundwork a little bit. Tell us about the intent of RSJ, and then we can launch into some of the many activities and initiatives that you have going on.
Thank you. So former Mayor Curtatone started, along with City Council, the idea of putting together a department that would essentially lead the city in its equity efforts, and also be the one to hold the city internally and externally accountable for all things having to do with equity, anti-racism, and social justice. And so they did listening sessions so that they can make sure that the process of creating this department and hiring the director was a community-driven process, and a process that really lent itself to hearing the voices of not just any constituent, but all constituents, because as you know, Somerville is a very diverse community. And so ensuring that they were listening also to the most vulnerable of our community members that would probably be most impacted by initiatives that the RSJ department would take on. And so they did the listening sessions, they did the call for what is now my position as the director of the RSJ department, and they also set forth specific priorities among the mission to start with, which was formerly known as Reimagining Policing, Civilian Oversight, and the RSJ Fund. And so when I came on board, taking on those prioritized initiatives, I then created other initiatives behind what would fulfill, at this point in time, part of our equity efforts for the city. Now the Reimagining Policing initiative is known as Public Safety for All, because what we understand and what we know to be true is that public safety is not just about reimagining policing. Public safety involves so much more, and it's about people feeling safe in different areas of their life. And so what we are trying to do is make sure that the evidence-based data that we're collecting, the thoughts, the concerns, really lends itself to us taking a really high-level, detailed look at public safety in Somerville, and what does that mean when we're looking at it to say we're going to make recommendations for policy changes or modifications around things that already exist, including police reform, including alternate co-response, unarmed response models for emergency calls. And so that is one of our prioritized initiatives, but we definitely have the RSJ Fund, which we are currently working on the application and making that accessible to constituents and organizations who are interested. We have the Civilian Oversight Task Force, which we recently put the call out for constituents to be able to apply to be on the task force. Next week, we'll be putting the call out for Public Safety for All Task Force, which constituents, again, if you live and work in Somerville, you'll be able to apply to be on that task force as well.
I think, that's a really nice summary of the initiatives. And one thing that I think is really important, and I appreciate you noting, is even when there are kind of already set parameters, the feedback that you receive from the residents really helps drive that process. So it's really important, I think, for community members to know that their voice does matter in all of these areas. Because as you said, even the renaming of that from Reimagining Policing to really taking the feedback, understanding that people view public safety in a different way, and being able to incorporate that, I think it really helps with the transparency of the work that is happening, and I think allows for a different level of engagement from community members as well. So I think it's really important for people to know that there is that fluidity within that. I mean, we all have our scope of duties that we need to do in our roles, but there is always a place where feedback allows for leverage options, which I think is really important. Before we get into some of the initiatives, I was hoping you could give us a bit of an overview about the positions and the work in the department. As you said, when you came on board, it was in the director role, and it takes time to identify the needs of a department, figure out what positions make sense, how they complement each other, how they support the work that's happening across other departments and divisions. So tell us a little bit more about RSJ as a whole.
I'm happy to. I love to boast and say that I have unicorns as staff because they really are absolutely amazing. We have currently a staff of 8. We have an RSJ analyst because, as you know, everything that we do is evidence-based. We have a deputy director, an RSJ coordinator who works really hard on programming. We have a commissions coordinator who is the staff liaison for the Human Rights Commission and the Somerville Commission for Women. We have an ADA coordinator who staffs the Somerville Commission for Persons with Disabilities. We have a community engagement specialist because we value community engagement, and it is very intentional on our part that everything we do, we get community input and involvement. And then we also have a project specialist because we realize that certain things need a more detailed eye. And so in order to make sure that we are doing things well and we are doing things intentionally, our project specialist helps us to be accountable to specific projects that really do need that extra attention to continue the forward movement.
Well, it's really great to see the development of the department. As you know, Health and Human Services had been involved with a lot of this other work, so it's really great to see the development of that and kind of how staff have stepped into the roles. And I will echo you. You have some really amazing staff, and the passion and commitment to the work is obvious in what they do and the community engagement that happens and their ways of connectivity. I think that it's a great resource for the community. So the hope in having you on today was really to make sure residents knew about the office as a whole, but also some of the activities and events that are coming up. So if you want to jump into some of the initiatives, perhaps provide more details to some of the ones you've already referenced, I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, absolutely. So for civilian oversight, we are currently doing a webinar series, and we're very excited because part of these webinar series are really going to involve bringing in experts around civilian oversight. So we have planned to bring in the experts from NACOL, who are the national experts around civilian oversight, and they train cities and department heads and mayors around civilian oversight. So we'll be having them as a panel expert, and it's all for constituents. It's all for constituent awareness and education. We're also bringing in our neighbors who already have civilian oversight boards from Boston and from Cambridge, so that they can be available for constituents to ask questions and share their thoughts about how it's going in their cities and how they set things up.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I think too, there are so many lessons learned. As we always like to say, like, any of the topics that we're working on, it doesn't end at city boundaries.
Right.
And so much of our work now takes regional approaches as well, because we're finding the interconnection with other communities really helps, just in terms of not recreating the wheel, and also having the ability to learn from subject matter experts.
Absolutely.
So if I could just ask, for those who aren't familiar with the term civilian oversight, what does that mean to you, and what does that mean to community members when they're hearing about it and the opportunities to participate?
So civilian oversight really is a way for a city to create an entity or a body that will either hold the city accountable to law enforcement, policies, procedures, complaints, or hold the police department accountable in certain ways. They have different models and different ways that can be brought to life. But like you said, that's why it's important for us to do the research. That's why it's important for us to connect and talk to other cities who are getting it done, because there is no cookie cutter way to do it. It's very much specified to the city, the needs of the city, what the data is telling us. And so it is the main element to this is that it is a body that will have some kind of ability to hold the city and or the police department accountable for complaints or potential allegations of happenings.
Thank you for the clarification. I just feel, in light of nationwide issues, sometimes terms get thrown around, so we just want to ensure that everyone has a good, solid baseline understanding of that as you talk more about the initiatives and activities. So what else besides civilian oversight?
Wow.
There's a lot.
There is a lot. So right now, we are really trying to push for our constituents to respond and fill out the Public Safety for All survey. We have over 1,000 responses.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and we're coming to an end because we need to get this information together and give it to the Public Safety for All task force members so that they can develop recommendations for the mayor around public safety. And so we're really trying to push for as many constituents as possible to fill out the survey. It's a very quick survey. We have it in 7 languages, 6 languages. We have it available hard copy, digitally, however it is. If somebody wants help filling out the survey, we make ourselves available for that. So it's really important for us to get as many people to respond to the survey because that is going to be a key element of the information that the Public Safety for All Task Force members will reflect upon in order to make recommendations. And we want to make sure that everybody's voices are heard. Another way to be able to do that, if you absolutely hate surveys, is we do interviews. We do what we call community visioning focus groups, and you can either be a part of a focus group or you can grab a group of your friends or family members and we will arrange to either, a location or whatever so that we can run a focus group and just have a casual conversation around public safety in Somerville. It's 5 questions, it's quick, but it allows people to feel free to share their thoughts and their concerns in a more organic way.
I think that's great. I mean, I will say the survey has been very well publicized. I feel like it's been shared through different groups and listservs and stuff. So I really think it was, I hope, effective in getting out to so many different subsets of the population as well, because I feel like I heard about it from so many different people in terms of saw an email or someone had done it or someone who had participated in it. And I think the fact, again, that it did stay brief, I think the 5 questions, pardon me, goodness, also allows for a level of engagement that doesn't happen if someone clicks a link and it's 3 pages long.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we really thought about different ways of engaging our community and being inclusive, because it's about the differentiation and really allowing people the opportunity to share in a way that they feel comfortable. It's all about the community. What is going to bring them to the table? What is going to help them feel comfortable to share their thoughts, even if it's an uncomfortable topic? And we really wanted to make sure that we were thinking of as many ways as possible for people to engage with the department so that we can get their voices on this.
So you had mentioned if people weren't able to do the survey, there were kind of these smaller gatherings. Without giving any away or like the peek behind the curtain, what kind of feedback are you getting from people about their completion of the survey or their ability to participate in these smaller groups? Any feedback about the questions or how they feel, as you said, talking about a topic that can be uncomfortable?
So at a very high level, what we've received as feedback from constituents, especially our most impacted by this initiative, is that they feel heard.
Oh, that's great.
They feel heard. There's been times, and more especially when we're doing the focus group with the youth, there's been times when they are very grateful to have the opportunity to really share their experience, because what they've said to me is they feel like nobody cares. They feel like they don't have the opportunity to share what their life is like here in Somerville and how they're going to be impacted by things. And so to be able to have that space, a non-judgmental space, a space where they're not being interrupted, where they're free to just say it how they need to say it, has really been freeing for many. And so they appreciate it. They write back to us and they say, thank you so much. How can we help? And so that has been a very motivating and positive side of, and also sometimes sad, because you hear some things that you really wish people wouldn't be experiencing. And even more of a reason why I do the work that I do, because I know that at some level I'll be able to address those concerns, or at least bring it to light for those people who can address it.
That's really critical to note too. I think, as you've indicated, like we can all have the education and our own experiences, but really understanding the need to amplify voices of people who oftentimes don't have a seat at the table, whether that's due to any language issue concerns or just sometimes feeling that level of comfort being able to engage with a government entity. I think of conversations I've had over the years with people who've moved here from other countries where interaction with government officials is not something to look forward to, you know. Sometimes people have had really negative experiences with that, and really figuring out a way to change that as well. So in one area you mentioned definitely is always a touch point for me is the need for youth voice. I mean, we continue to talk about our next generations being the future leaders of this community and wanting them to stay and be invested and potentially raise their own families, knowing that all of these issues happen. So understanding that they can have their voice here now and have the ability to inform future policy and change and things like that. It's such an opportunity to empower young people in a way that is so critical to the future work that we all will be doing and the work that hopefully they will be doing in the community.
Yes, absolutely. And it really is something that is close to my heart because I was that youth that was involved. At 7, I remember going with my dad to rallies and seeing the big oat tags above my head. At 14, I was, you know, talking to legislators about, you know, violent incidences that were happening in my community. And I was training youth to go along with me to go to these rallies and speak up and talk about how these violent experiences were affecting us. So for me, coming into this role, it was an absolute humbling and privilege to be able to say something is going to be created so that our youth have a voice. And I'm happy to say that we do have that something. And we started last year by making a call for the youth of Somerville to be a part of RSJ Youth League. And so the RSJ Youth League started last year with doing their study, and this year they are back at it again, and they're taking the results of that study and they're forming what is going to be a permanent cabinet for the youth in the RSJ department. And so I look forward to seeing that the work that they're doing. They've been working with CPAR students from Harvard Graduate School, and they are on it and they are excited. They have so much to say, and just sitting in those meetings with them, I'm very excited because Somerville really has some leaders that are starting off young, and we're happy to be the department that's feeding into that to help them have a seat at the table.
Well, that's wonderful too, and I think being around young people, I don't know about you, but I like feed off of that energy as well, so I think it's a really nice way to recharge. I mean, I think there's always the passion for the work that all city staff do. That's why we do the work that we have, and we're in these positions, but I think sometimes it's really nice to get that like burst of that where, you see young people committed to that and really wanting to be an implement of change.
Absolutely.
And it's just really, really great to see that.
Yes.
I know you wanted to talk about ADA as well.
Yes. So we have our great ADA coordinator who has been working really hard, taking a look at the systems, the procedures, the policies around ADA, how to improve upon that. And so last year she did an internal survey, which did an audit of internally as city departments, how we're doing, where we need more training. And she's been working hard at that. She recently did a training for the full fire department staff, and this week she's working hard at training the full police force in Somerville. And so we're really grateful for all the hard work that she's doing. And what's going to be coming next in the next few weeks is we are going to have the ADA community survey.
Great. So
that we can begin again to get the input, the thoughts, the feedback from our community members around ADA and their experiences with how the city is doing around those issues.
I think it's interesting too, I feel like we all kind of live now in the pre-COVID and height of COVID, and knock on something wood as we transition out of COVID timeframe, but really understanding too the issues that have come to the forefront around accessibility, particularly during the height of the pandemic, whether it was people physically navigating community space or trying to participate remotely in things. So it really is interesting. I'm very intrigued to see what the survey will show as well with that. And I think a lot of other city departments have a lot of parallel initiatives that complement the work of RSJ, and also gives us the opportunity to take your learnings and think about how we implement that into our own work. So can you take a minute and just share a little bit about how RSJ works with and supports other city departments?
Yes. So RSJ, in our mission, it is very clear that we are a collaborative department, which means we don't take one side, we don't take the other side. We are working with everyone within their need and in an advisory format and helping to put together programming. For example, part of what RSJ is really working hard at is maintaining the playbook on everything that we've been doing on community engagement, because our hope is that in collaboration with other departments and as we have conversations with other departments, that we're able to share our notes on this really worked, this is one way to really engage with this constituency, and so when we do community engagement, we really want it to be something where it's sustainable and it's inclusive and it's equitable, right? And so we collaborate very much with SOIA, Somerville's Office of Immigrant Affairs. We collaborate with HHS. We collaborate with Economic Development. You name it, we've probably collaborated with the department, because it is important for us to be in a space where every department feels comfortable talking with us, coming to us if they have questions around equity, if they have questions around community engagement and how to make it more inclusive, or what did we do to troubleshoot this demographic or this ward. And so, we are at an advisory level when it comes to being a part of certain projects that will probably take off or are being planned. But then we're also here to just be a collaborative colleague and see how can we make other people's work easier by sharing out what we already know works.
And we all appreciate that. I think community engagement is the forefront of everything that we do across departments, so any lessons learned are always welcome. As we're coming to a close, if people have questions or want to learn more, what's the best way for them to reach out?
So the best way for them to reach out, we have multiple methods. You can either go on our website page on the Somerville City website, just type in RSJ and you'll see multiple ways to contact me or to contact our community engagement specialist, Leo Galindo. So you can email us at rsj@somerville, and I'll say that slowly, rsj@somervillema.gov. Or you can call us with the extension 2058. And
I think people could utilize any of those methods, which is great. I want to thank you again for taking the time to come on and share the important work that RSJ is doing in the community. I hope this conversation creates a spark in the community and people reach out with different questions and thoughts on the upcoming initiative. So again, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Excellent. As always, I'd like to thank the production crew, Steve DiCarlo, Joe Constantine, and Ben Martin. Thank you for watching.